constantly RSS has tried to reduce the domination of Narendra Modi over the Sangh Parivar.
This is a party which has actually now started dictating which are the voters it wants to have voting rights.
Only a social movement could reverse the trend, and that may happen.
Hello and welcome to The Federal. I am Nilanjan Mukhopadhyay. Over the past 4 years, you have probably been seeing me interviewing various eminent people across the globe. Now, from this episode onward, we have decided to rebrand the program, and it is now called Conversations with Nilanjan. So, welcome to the first and the inaugural issue of, or rather, the episode of Conversations with Nilanjan. My guest today is Professor Christophe Jaffrelot, who has already appeared in this program in its previous avatar. We have been having once in a year and a half or once in a year at very critical moments of Indian contemporary political history. We have been going to him to try to unpack what is happening in India. Welcome to this program and this conversation, Professor Jaffrelot. It's really always a delight and a very learning experience also to speak with you.
Same here, Nilanjan. Thank you for having me again.
As we are talking, we are just through with this recent round of elections in 4 states and 1 union territory of Puducherry. Now, we are witnessing a very significant and a very heightened kind of a tussle between the central forces and the regional political parties. Regionalism, as you know, has been a long phenomenon in Indian politics, but seems to be weakening at the moment. That is what the election verdict this time says. Mamata Banerjee of Trinamool Congress has lost, and M.K. Stalin lost to completely a newcomer from Tamil Nadu. You have also repeatedly talked about the BJP's goal of having a unitary state. So my first question is that in the backdrop of the election, the verdict that it has given, do you think that the BJP and the Sangh Parivar in its entirety is getting closer to be able to establish a unitary state in India?
Yes, certainly. It has never been so close to this achievement, quote unquote. First of all, because they have conquered new states, at least one very big trophy, that is West Bengal. That's a milestone in their trajectory. And secondly, because they are getting closer and closer to the magic figure of having enough seats in parliament for reforming the constitution. These are 2 reasons we may return to in greater detail, but there is a third factor, of course. SIR is one, redelimitation, and we have to look at both things, I think, together. But redelimitation definitely would be one more step towards a unitary state, because that would transform the North, the strongholds of BJP, as almost a majority, a political majority. And when we say this, when we say they are on their way to create a unitary state, we need to get back to the roots of this matter. It has always been their goal. And, for decades, I keep reading their publications, BJP publications, RSS publications, Jansang publications.
1957. That is when the
exactly.
First...
This is a very good point, Nilanjan. This is the moment when Jansang, in its election manifesto, says very clearly that they are against linguistic states, that they are disapproving of the withdrawing of the Indian map that started in the early 50s. Telugu speaking Andhra Pradesh and Tamil speaking Tamil Nadu were created in 53. But of course, the real turning point is 56, when you have so many new
Yes,
linguistic states.
reorganization of states.
Exactly. And then they say, this is not the way we want India to be governed. They have a clear sense of decentralization. They are not for hyper centralization, but they don't want this brand of centralization. In 57, they say we want to create janpads at the sub-state level. You amalgamate districts, but they are not supposed to be mini nations. Linguistic states are mini nations, dividing
Okay.
the patriotism of India. So, yes, it's not a new story. It is the end of a long journey that they may now be almost in a position to achieve.
Right. There's also this another factor which has been going on for the last 10 years, and even, or rather, since 2014. Was also there fairly strongly and visibly during the Atal Bihari Vajpayee tenure between 1998 and 2004. That is the internal dynamics within the Sangh Parivar. The RSS wanting to control the government, and the government not wanting to be controlled by the RSS, even though they have common ideological goals. Since 2014, also, you would remember that that period was preceded by a time when the RSS did not seem very keen on agreeing that Mr. Modi will be the prime ministerial face of the BJP. Anyway, eventually they possibly realized that we have to have him. There is no other possibility. But in the initial years, 2014, 15, 16, even 2017, Yogi Adityanath's appointment as the Uttar Pradesh chief minister, for instance, all that showed that the RSS was wanting to have some kind of a counterbalancing force to Narendra Modi within the BJP. But now, how do you assess the internal equation between the RSS and the BJP, or what these RSS Sangh Parivar people say, Sarkar and Sangh equation, or the Sarkar and Sangh dynamics? How is it playing out now?
Again, this is not new. RSS has always lived with this contradiction. On the one hand, they need politicians. They need people who can, well, simply get voters, who are in a position to attract voters.
That's right.
On the other hand, they want their organization to prevail, and this organization is not a mill creating charismatic leaders. On the contrary, we have to go back to what Golwalkar was saying: no angularities, no personality that should prevail over others. So this
The
tension has
organization is more important than the
exactly,
individual. That is the way it was framed.
exactly, individuals would be the angularities. So you
Yes.
have this contradiction. You have this tension, and we saw that in the past. In the beginning, Jansang had Dindayal Upadhyay as its leader,
Yes.
and of course, Mr. Upadhyay could not attract voters because he was a pracharak till the end and not a man who could speak from the platform. But when Bajrad Madok became too prominent, then they had to expel him because he emancipated
Yes.
himself from the organization. So this tension is, I would say, consubstantial, constitutive of the Sangh Parivar. And as you said, Narendra Modi was not their cup of tea in the beginning. We may remember that in Gujarat in 2007, for the state elections, RSS did not canvass for him
Yes.
because
True.
he was too independent. And that was, in fact, one way to make him even more independent. Because if RSS did not canvass for him, he had to create his own parallel power structure, and that's what he did. And he was in a position to relate directly to the voters, circumventing the RSS network. forcing RSS to fall in line and say, okay, he has been re-elected. He has his own supporters, his own also networks, media-based networks, and of course Kishore will come in 2012, and we'll see Prashant Kishore becoming a spine doctor. Well, Modi did not need RSS, and in 2014, Bhagwat summoned him to Nagpur, and he said, I'm not coming. I don't need your advice. So,
and he ran the campaign from Gandhinagar or Ahmedabad. Every evening he would be, using the network, the wireless network, to be able to go and address people all in these television vans all over the country.
and after this victory, RSS tried hard to avoid having Amit Shah as BJP president and failed again. So
Yes.
constantly, RSS has tried to reduce the domination of Narendra Modi over the Sangh Parivar and failed. Now,
Even this latest president, do you think that the RSS could not get the person they wanted?
well, they certainly can get some modus operandi, and I would say, yeah, there are some concessions that are made. But at the end of the day, it's a balance of power that is not working in their favor.
Okay.
So they are waiting. They are waiting for the next moment when they would be in a position to prevail again and be the referee between different applicants to the top job. My hunch is that till Narendra Modi is Prime Minister of India, they would benefit as much as they can from his, I would say, rule, but it will be after he leaves this scene that we'll see an attempt by RSS to stage a comeback and be again the kingmaker. That's not for tomorrow, I'm afraid.
So basically, they have to last out the Modi years as a second fiddle.
Yeah,
After that,
well,
they will once again to try to assume the dominant position.
yeah, that's my guess. But it's not as if they did not benefit because, as you said, ideologically there is no difference. So,
Yes.
so they benefit because on so many fronts, Narendra Modi delivers. He delivers regarding, of course, the plea of the Muslims in India, regarding Kashmir, regarding Ayodhya, regarding so many things that
Three,
would not have been accessible without a strong Hindutva oriented prime minister, and is that person.
No, even the latest decision of the government to appoint a high powered committee to study so called alleged demographic imbalances in the country and how it has actually changed the demographic character of India. This is straight away a lift from the RSS resolutions of the 1960s, 70s, and 80s.
Yeah,
So the
yeah,
RSS really would not have anything to complain about. People would say they're just being fussy. They just want to have their signature on the paper, but
yeah.
things are being done in any case.
And at the same time, there is also this very big weakness on the RSS side. They don't have the public figures you need
Right.
for becoming, for instance, chief ministers. Where are the chief ministers coming from lately?
They're all from the ABVP. A large number of them are coming from the ABVP, which is technically a part of the RSS.
Yes, but others are coming from Congress also.
Yes, yes.
And that's an
Assam,
interesting
West Bengal.
and that's an
All
interesting detour. How do you
yes.
how do you make a politician not in the ranks of the RSS so easily? So they have also this handicap that they
No,
need people coming from up, coming from Congress, because politicians are a different brand of no, they are different animals, and these
right.
animals are not trained easily with the khaki short.
Since we are talking about the Modi era and after that the RSS would like to seize control, would you like to speculate on who could be the RSS choices, in a situation when Modi is no longer the leader of the BJP?
Well, I'm still convinced that Gadkari is their number one choice.
Okay.
But in a race like this one,
Hmm.
you do not necessarily go for your number one choice. You may have
Okay.
to be prepared to go for the B plan,
Okay.
because there's no point pushing a candidate who has too little chances to win. So
Right.
let's see.
He's not a big vote catcher.
Yeah.
So, who is the best vote catcher at the moment
Well,
among the non-Modi leaders?
you know the best the best moment to assess this, to respond to this question, will be the next UP elections.
Okay.
If Yogi Adityanath can win one third for a third time elections in UP, he will appear as a vote catcher of a different kind. Now, will he win? Uh, that's a very important, I would say, question. We'll see soon what
So,
is
so
the.
would you say that the detractors of Yogi Adityanath within the BJP and within the RSS would not be really very, very keen that the BJP wins in Uttar Pradesh once again in 2027?
We are reaching the end of a cycle. If not
Okay.
in 2029, soon after that, there'll be a change of guard at
Okay.
the very top. So inevitably, the kind of question you ask is relevant, because inevitably factions will crystallize for
Okay.
preparing themselves. So I agree. Some of the opponents of Yogi Adityanath may not be sad, even within the BJP, if he lost, but that would be an important, very important variable to factor in for the next Lok Sabha elections.
Yes. Anyway, let's leave this issue of speculation, something more concrete that we can talk about. I remember in 2024 when we spoke after the Lok Sabha elections, a few months after that, in fact, towards the end of 2024, you had argued that it had actually been a kind of a new phase of Indian politics was emerging. We talked about extensively about how Modi had been weakened because the BJP did not have majority, how he had become dependent on coalition partners, and that the opposition had greater strength, greater voice, both within parliament and even outside. 2.5 years later, it appears to have, or rather, 2 years later precisely, it appears that Modi is back at the helm of affairs and controlling everything, has a complete hold of the entire system. Assembly elections, in all assembly elections except Jharkhand, possibly one of the notable elections. But in this round, West Bengal, kind of a victory, and the scale at which it has happened, it has actually been the last frontier, which they really wanted to have. So it is going to have a tremendous impact on the politics of Hindutva and also on the regional politics also. Now, how has this change happened? How could Modi, from a position of weakness, jump onto this position of immense strength which he has now? Is it largely a part of the mistakes made by the opposition, or has Modi made some really tactically brilliant moves?
No, I think that indeed 2024 opened a new chapter. And it is precisely because Modi appeared weak after the Lok Sabha elections that we've seen something opening a new chapter. Elections are even less than before an even playing field. We keep looking at these elections as business as usual.
Okay.
They are not. They are not. Remember, immediately after the Lok Sabha elections, Maharashtra elections, Haryana elections, and there are so many specialists of Indian elections who demonstrated that these elections were not fair.
Okay.
2024, the Lok Sabha elections of 2024 showed that Modi could lose. And if there is one thing he cannot afford, it's to lose.
Okay.
There is so much at stake. So, how do you retain power when the risk of losing increases? Well, you make the election moment something different. We saw that in Maharashtra, we saw that in Haryana, we saw that in BR. And in BR, they initiated something called SIR that made the competition even more unequal. So we have entered a new era. We can't look at these elections as fair.
Okay.
Not only because of SIR, not only because, of course, the press coverage, not only because of the fact that the kind of financial resources of the ruling party is so much more than the opposition, but also because of things like gerrymandering, gerrymandering in Assam, unprecedented. So
The
this is,
delimitation that you are talking about,
and then,
where
and,
they
and
where they
last but not
change
least,
the shape of the constituencies to ensure that minorities could not influence the result in constituency in the number of constituencies which happened
you
previously.
see, you see the number of indications we have that since 2024, BJP cannot afford to play the usual political game because the risk of losing is such that you have to change the rules of the game. So, in that sense, you can certainly consider that yes, he is weak because he cannot win without changing the rules of the game. But of course, by changing the rules of the game, he becomes stronger and could win even West Bengal.
So now we are in a situation where a large number of people, when they talk, who are critical of the government, when they say that this is a party which has actually now started dictating which are the voters it want to have voting rights. Now, in such a stage that we are in, if this is true, then is our elections uh, going to be any fair, and does it really uh, you know warrant the opposition parties to contest elections? Play It's like playing in a game where your players are down by 5 and the terrain on your side is uneven. A hockey field is sloping, that it's easy to shoot into your goal, but you cannot shoot because it's a very steep climb for you.
Yeah,
Does it really, what is the likely shape of Indian politics in such a stage?
yeah. But there are two questions in one there, Nilanjan, because
Yes.
your first sentences were about the way some voters are disenfranchised.
Yes.
And that's something that makes indeed elections different. But something we could expect. Again, we need to read what Hindu nationalists have said, written over now 100 years.
Yes.
Golwalkar, the first one, said if Muslims don't pay allegiance to Hindu culture, they should not be citizens of
We,
the country. They should not be recognized as citizens of the country. You know, Incidentally, this is exactly what Atal Bihari Vajpayee himself said many years later in a piece of writing that has been eliminated, occulted subsequently. The RSS is my soul. In this piece of writing that I really recommend because you may find it somewhere, it is
Okay.
something he says. Muslims should not remain full citizens of India if they don't pay allegiance to the Hindu culture. So they are doing what was already on their agenda for decades. Now, of course, that's a different India. If you do what Israel is doing in the
West
system
Bank.
that they have started themselves,
Okay.
that's one. The second question you ask is, should the opposition continue to contest elections if they are bound to lose? That's a very complicated question. Because yes, if you're bound to lose and you play the election game, you legitimize the winner systematically. Now, if you boycott elections, everyone has to boycott elections. Because if some opposition parties alone boycott elections, those who will be still in the fray will benefit, and therefore the system will continue. Also, the ruling party can very well create opposition parties in order to claim that there is a real competition. So boycotting elections is something we've seen elsewhere. Bangladesh, BNP decided
Doesn't work.
to boycott elections.
Yes.
It did not work. The thing is, in all the countries around India, it's not via electoral processes mostly that changes have occurred on the political scene. And therefore, we may even wonder whether boycotting or not boycotting makes any difference.
Any difference?
For real change to happen.
There is another very important point which has happened in the last 12 years, that since Mr. Modi came, you have spent a lot of time studying the Indian functioning of the Indian judiciary. And I will go beyond that. It's not just the judiciary. Your findings about how the judiciary has kind of, given up its structural independence which it has, and has actually started looking or imagining what would please the executive, the political executive. Examples have been set forward. If you do this, what pleases us, you get Rajya Sabha membership, you get an opposition as a governor. So there are examples which have been set. So there are some people who want to adopt similar kind of path and strategy. But also, very important what is about what we are talking about, the Election Commission of India. How would you assess the incline of the Election Commission of India since 2014-15? After that, for some 1, 2, 3 years, things are fine. But after, I think, 2016 onward, we started seeing instances of show cause notices not being issued to BJP leaders. That is the first sign that we saw during the campaign for violating the Model Code of Conduct. Whereas these would be issued for far lesser violations of opposition parties. So this entire trajectory of about 8-9 years, how do you assess it?
Well, there is clearly a loss of independence, prestige, moral authority. When we compare what the Election Commission is today with what it used to be under T.N. Seshan, for instance. T.N. Seshan was so independent that he decided to reschedule elections the week before they were supposed to take place, after everybody has spent so much money in vain.
Or even Mr. Lingdo, when he was the chief election commissioner during the 2002 Gujarat elections, that was a very important period.
And Qureshi. Of course.
Yes, yes.
What does it say? It says that men matter. The personalities of people matter. You might have, yeah, positions which are protected under the law. If you don't have the right people occupying them, that will not make any difference. But that's only one explanation. I think the other explanations run parallel to what you said about the Supreme Court of India. You you will get a post-retirement sinecure if you behave. Number one. Number two, you'll be appointed only if we find you suitable for the job. Now,
Okay.
this is how the collegium has been completely neutralized. Now the collegium selects justices who are of the liking of the government. So the independence has gone. Same story here. You know that the IAS officers who will join the election commission will be selected because they are of the liking of the government. Thirdly, and we should not neglect this, underestimate that, ideological affinities. You know, Hindu nationalism has become so much hegemonic as a mindset. In Islamophobia has become so all pervasive. You know, that's one thing we need to now also admit. It's not only um, for the sake of power. It's not only for the sake of some post-retirement position. It's also because they believe in it, and that's
Do you think that, this is something I've always wondered for a long time. Do you think that in the 80s and the 90s, I'm referring to these decades because 1980s is the time when I became a journalist. I know that 1980s is also the time when you began to study Indian politics and the emergence of Hindu nationalism very seriously. You did your PhD in the 1980s, which eventually led to your first book on Hindu nationalism. You know, that at that time there was some kind of a belief that India would be perpetually secular.
yeah.
Do you think that this was a misreading of the situation? That deep down, somewhere, there was this very strong Islamophobic tendencies which were not being articulated because it was seen as politically incorrect. BJP came, it gave the confidence of people to say what they want to say.
You know, I think we underestimated the groundwork of the Sangh Parivar over decades.
Okay.
And I say we, but in fact, the last sentence of my first book that you are referring to is precisely saying this. It's in 1996. Vajpayee has been a prime minister for a few days only, and I add in my postscript, it's not because they could not form the government that they have not become a force to reckon with, because at the grassroots level, the Sangh Parivar is doing a lot of work. And this is for me the main mistake of many of those who were sitting in Delhi, ignoring what was going on in the countryside, in the slums, in everywhere, because the Sangh Parivar has been active in each and every sector of society. And therefore, even the elite groups, have have been part of one of the organizations of the RSS. The lawyers have their own organizations. The,
Yes.
the
Teachers,
teachers, ex
students.
ex army officers. There is not one sector that is not targeted. So it's very important to compare the 80s and today by keeping this in mind. Decades of groundwork in the context of the Ayodhya movement, because the Ayodhya movement
Was
For
central to
the,
their emergence.
it was, and it was a mass movement. So it has changed the mindset of the society. And that's why when we try to understand how IAS officers of the Election Commission do what they do and do not criticize those who are using Hinduism in their election discourses, well, so many new kinds of influence have transformed the whole atmosphere of the country in the past few years, in the past decades.
That is something there. Uh, Truly, to it's important to wonder about this, that whether this can be in any way reversed or not. Now, I will draw you into very briefly into another aspect which you have talking about. You have spoken about the RSS and its that it has already established what you said, a deeper state. We talk about, you have studied Pakistan also, so within the context of Pakistan, we talk about the deep state. Here, you talk about the deeper state.
Yeah.
Now, despite the contradictions and the tussle between the BJP and the RSS, how is it that you say that the RSS very much has a control over the deeper state, which completely merges and work unitedly with what you call the electoral state?
Yes, this is indeed a very important, I would say, innovation that the Sangh Parivar has initiated. When we say deep state, we think about Pakistan indeed, and we think about the way the establishment, as we say in Pakistan, the army, remote controls the government. They may be civilians. They are in fact a facade of respectability that the army is using, but this is the deep state. A deeper state is a different idea. The idea is that you have the official state, you have the institutions, you have the police. And in a BJP ruled state, the police will, of course, be sympathetic to the vigilantes. But the vigilantes will supplement what the police does.
Okay.
First of all, because you don't have a sufficiently large number of police officers, but also because the vigilantes can do things the police can hardly do. They are doing illegal things routinely. But illegality is different from illegitimacy. What they do is legitimate. To patrol the highway, to check the trucks where they suspect a cow may be taken to the slaughterhouse, to arrest the truck, to lynch the driver, that's illegal, but it's in the name of Hinduism, it's in the name of protection of Hinduism, and therefore they
That's
get to
allowed.
it. And that's the deeper state. The state goes deeper in society because they do the job the government is more than happy with, but in a different way. And, it's more in tune with what the RSS is for. RSS is for controlling society, not for controlling the state, the government. They don't believe so much in the state. The state is artificial. The state is coming from above. They want to crisscross society in order to control society, to change the mindset of the people at the
Yes,
grassroots level.
in fact, they often say that if you ask any of the senior leaders that what is your ultimate goal of the Sangh, so they say that we want society to become the Sangh,
Exactly.
which means that
Coextensive.
the coexistence of society and
Again, and again, we have to go back to the roots. It's exactly what Edgar said in 2025, in
exactly.
1925. So there's nothing new there. It's just that the same agenda is now reaching its quote unquote logical conclusion. And that's why we can certainly anticipate problems in case of any alternation in power. Government may change, the rulers may change, this network of vigilantes is deeply
They will not go away.
rooted in society. And that's one more challenge. And you don't find that in countries following a similar trajectory. You have ethno-nationalist leaders in many countries now, very similar to
Yes.
Narendra Modi, Erdogan, so many others. But when they lose power, they disappear.
They disappear. The politics also changes.
Exactly. In
But
the
it may
case,
not happen in India because of a deeper state which has already been created by the RSS. The
that's why
RSS Sangh
yeah,
Parivar is also there.
only a social movement can make a big difference.
Now, here I come to my last question of the conversation. We are looking at what I would say a frightening consistency, because you say what is happening now was written or said by Hedgewar 101 years ago or 102 years ago. That has happened. So they have been unwavering. They have established control over various arms of the state, judiciary, the election commission, various other things which determine who is going to be in government. So it is a fairly gloomy scenario. You also say that opposition parties will, really not be able to gain anything by boycotting elections. So they'll have to keep on struggling, hoping. Yet, despite such a bleak scenario, you talk about, if not in 2029, at least another 5 years later, you anticipate some kind of a government change. I do not know if you also anticipate a change in the politics of India. This favoring Hindu nationalistic Islamophobic idea which is sitting in the minds of people. But in this suddenly comes across because of what I say, some over arrogance of the Chief Justice of India, uses the word cockroach and accuses those who are the result of the failure of policy as being cockroaches. They immediately do not look at it as a slur, but they immediately own it. Yes, we are cockroaches. We are cockroaches because of your mistakes. And then it suddenly becomes a widespread social media movement. I do not know if this is going to, actually end in the manner in which Satyajit Ray's very famous dystopian classic Hirak Raja Deshe ended, that with the overthrow of the despotic king. May not happen. But how are you, as a social scientist from a distance, reading this, and how are you looking at it differently compared to the other social movement which happened in the last years of the UPA movement? That is the uh, movement against corruption, India against corruption movement.
Yeah. No, this is indeed a very exciting question and perspective. As I said, only a social movement could reverse the trend, and that may happen. That may happen primarily because we are just at the beginning of a major economic and social crisis. It is just the beginning. And it's not only because of this
War.
oil crisis, gas crisis, fertilizers crisis. Of course, it's amplifying the movement. But the Indian economy was, in any case, even before that, in a very bad shape. And unemployment had become so chronic, so all pervasive, lack of investment. No, name one issue and it is there. So when you have such a bad management, such a mismanagement of the economy, when you have a social crisis that is mounting and affecting the youth primarily, you may be at the dawn of a social movement. Now,
Okay.
each and every country around India has experienced a social movement of that kind.
That's right.
In some cases, the owners of power could keep it. The Pakistani army kept power, or parties who were in office before got came back, and that's what we saw in Bangladesh. Or you have completely newcomers, like in Nepal, when a rap singer becomes
Yes.
prime minister, or you have a fourth
In
scenario,
India, Tamil Nadu.
and that's the case in India indeed. But just to finish with the neighbors,
Yes,
Sri Lanka had a fourth scenario, a party that was nowhere in the picture, all of a sudden
exactly.
wins a majority and dislodge from power dynasties in charge of the country for 70 years. Um, what could be the scenario in India? This is certainly one of the most exciting, um, I would say, perspectives at the moment. One thing, because we are talking about the RSS primarily, one thing we should certainly keep in mind is it will be very difficult for RSS to support a government alienating the youth. You know, if RSS wants to be coextensive with society,
Hmm.
it has to be in tune with society. And if there is a furor, if there is a rage, if there are demonstrations, how will they go against a wave of that magnitude? And
Yes,
that is something we'll have to keep in mind. And that will be inevitably different from what you were referring to, Nilanjan. 2012, 2013, it was a fabricated movement. It was a fabricated social movement. Yes, there was corruption, but not at all the kind of corruption we thought there was, because all the cases, the Colgate, the 2G gate,
turned out to be,
everything has been.
nothing could be proven.
It was fabricated, and it was fabricated with few people, Anna Hazare, Arvind Kejriwal, who were prepared to play in the hands of RSS, basically.
And also elements of the RSS were involved in the movement.
Of course, they were there, and they were behind the scene even
Yes.
more. If we have a spontaneous youth movement today, it will be a different movement. But a movement needs a leader, at least a team of leaders. A movement needs a sense of direction, and it's very complicated for the existing politicians to promote themselves that way, because they will be accused of being, well, of hijacking the movement, recuperating the movement.
Right.
So these youth, if they really create a social movement, these young men will have to find leaders among them,
Within themselves.
among themselves, in their own ranks, and it is not so easy. It is far from easy, especially when the scale of the demonstrations are at a semi-continental or subcontinental level. But that is something to watch, definitely, because who would have expected such a huge backlash?
Yes.
Social media, of course, amplify things and may help them to coordinate. We'll see.
We'll see. There's a lot to see and look ahead, and there will be many more conversations with Nilanjan, with Christophe Jaffrelot in the future. Thank you so much for coming and unpacking a bit of a very complicated period of India. You definitely have, given us some very small signs of hope at the end of the entire conversation. Thank you so much once again.
Thank you, Nilanjan.